Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this to my super chat. Thank you. Your support is greatly appreciated. State faces New York faces a $34.3 billion budget gap. Essentially a deficit of over $30 billion. Okay. That is, and then they blame it on a global crisis. Okay, but the U.S. grew at 3.8% in the second quarter. That's with the tariffs. Once the tariffs kick in, the working class benefits. Jobs are brought back into the country. That's why you vote for Trump, because he's the best thing for the working class. Not a socialist or democratic socialist or possible communist. I don't see what the insult is. If you're a democratic socialist, why would you be insulted by being called a communist? But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. Let's get started. Some of these things are okay, actually. MAMDANI's rent freeze and city-owned grocery stores and corporate tax hikes are going to really hurt the city. Check this out. Hit subscribe, people. This is the best thing for President Trump, Vance, Rubio in 2028. Vance has already won a landslide because of this victory for Democrats in New York, which is a Pyrrhic victory. It's really a victory for Vance or Rubio in 2028. I think Vance for sure.
Good morning, Cheryl. Yeah, so we're in a rent-stabilized apartment. What that means is the landlord can only increase rent by a certain margin. This is a 4-bedroom. It rents for $1,000. For those that don't live in New York, to put that in perspective, average 4-bedroom rent in New York City, according to RentHop, is closer to $9,000.
Average 4-bedroom rent in New York City is $9,000. He wants a rent freeze. And he's not talking about the $9,000 rental units, but he wants a rent freeze in New York City that is going to make every building decrepit because the people who own the buildings are not going to want to pay for the upkeep if MAMDANI doesn't allow them to increase rents, correlating to inflation or, the economic situation in New York.
The tenants have now left, leaving behind about $5,000 in trash, and renovations would cost at least $150K. The landlord says it's not worth it. They're going to let this unit sit empty, meaning one less apartment on the market, because they can't make money off of it. And meanwhile, ZORAN MAMDANI, what he wants to do for the affordability crisis is to freeze rent for apartments like this one. That would mean that 40% of the apartments in New York City, roughly, could not have their rent increased. And as it currently stands, 20% of those apartments are considered are in bad financial standing. This would make that problem worse. That is why the former New York Democratic Assembly member who served alongside MAMDANI says if his plan were to go through, it would be the nail in the coffin for this portion of the real estate market.
What MAMDANI and Democratic Socialists don't understand is that if you freeze rent, it sounds moral, it sounds good, but it's immoral and unjust. Why? Because apartment buildings need plumbing fixed. They need paint. They need, elevators serviced. There's upkeep. There's overhead costs to owning any business. And in real estate, there's a tremendous amount of costs. So you put a rent freeze in the most expensive city in the country, and it's expensive for a number of reasons. But the most expensive city in the country, then you're not going to have the units available for people who want a place to live, because these units are going to look like this.
It's an attempt at affordability, but what he's going to achieve is insolvency. This is not a solution that actually addresses the costs that have been going up throughout the years, mostly due to government policy.
Burgos is arguing that this is a bit of MAMDANI shooting himself in the foot, but the mayoral frontrunner is touching on something important. There is an affordability crisis in the Big Apple. 25% of renters pay more than 50% of their income to rent. The understanding is you should not pay more than 30% of your income towards rent. And it's very hard to own a piece of the Big Apple. Out of all the people who live here, including myself, 2/3 of them are renters. So there's a big problem. MAMDANI has a solution, but those in the know say it would only make the problem worse.
That's the same problem in Los Angeles, same problem in New York, all of these, same problem in Chicago. Every Democratic-run city has extremely high real estate and rent costs. Okay, that's why you see people leaving New York, California, and going to Texas and Florida.
The socialist Zoran MAMDANI may be on the verge of winning New York City's mayoral election. That is causing a lot of folks to pack their bags and leave, apparently. That's what we hear. Realtors in Connecticut are reporting that bidding wars, like in the COVID days. Real estate guy Pierre DeBas joins me now. First of all, are people selling their homes in New York City and leaving? Is there a rush to get out?
There's not a rush at the moment. The hysteria that's there has been a bit blown out of proportion. You know, I'm a real estate attorney, and our firm focuses on commercial residential transactions. In New York City, we have the largest residential practice in the entire city.
Okay.
So I'm talking to buyers and sellers on a daily basis. There's definitely trepidation, there's definitely concern, but there's no exodus. In 2020, when we had COVID in de Blasio, you had a real exodus. You had a U-Haul truck. Every city block that you saw, there's a U-Haul truck moving people. You're not having that right now. If anything, the market's very healthy in New York City.
So people are buying.
People are buying.
What kind of person is coming into New York and buying a house in Manhattan?
You know, it's largely fueled by the luxury market, and that's one of the negatives that took place. You know, I always say that de Blasio, his policies drove out people more so than COVID. And that trend started there, where everybody wants to be in New York City. New York City, my fear is that when these radical policies keep going further and further, this city becomes more of a pied-à-terre city.
Okay, but wait a second. Rich people are moving in.
Yes,
now,
predominantly those second homes.
Knowing, so they're going to play the 6-month trick.
That's correct.
The rich come to Manhattan, stay for 1 day less than 6 months and leave.
And don't pay taxes and enjoy other fruits and beauty of the city.
That's what's okay. Now, we've talked about Connecticut as being a place which people want to go to as opposed to New York City. Why Connecticut?
Greenwich has always been a hub for Wall Street and financial institutions. Many hedge funds and financial institutions moved out to Greenwich, and the ones that work in the city. It's a great commute, and it's an extraordinarily beautiful and affluent neighborhood. That's really it.
Okay, and the rich are moving to Greenwich, as they've always moved to Greenwich. Why do real estate people think that rent control, if it were to be announced in New York City, why do you think it would be so bad?
It's absolutely disastrous. And when you go back to 2019, Bill de Blasio enacted the most sweeping changes of our rent regulations in New York City history. And what that did is it made it cost prohibitive for landlords to improve and renovate their properties and maintain them in a habitable manner. Now, MAMDANI wants to come in and freeze rents. There has to be an incentive for people to come in and buy properties, manage properties, and create housing. If you're going to have rent freezes, where's capital going to come from other parts of the country to want to invest in New York City multifamily housing? And the only way to create additional supply and affordable housing is through incentivizing development. Over-regulation creates nothing but headache and turmoil. Having reasonable regulation with financial incentives where the parallels of society between corporate America and social welfare intersect, that's the only way you can do this. So these rent freezes, if he goes through with this, will be an absolute catastrophe.
Okay, well, you talk to people.
So he either goes through with his socialist plans or he scales back and doesn't follow through with all of these. And that's actually probably the best thing that he could do to keep his job as mayor.
People who are buying or selling their real estate in Manhattan. You talk to them every day.
That's right.
Do they all mention MAMDANI, the socialist?
Well, a lot of them mention MAMDANI, the communist, because when you do think about these policies that we're talking about, large part of what he's trying to do in these rent freezes, when again you take back to 2019, rent stabilized housing dropped in value by 50%. The value of these buildings dropped by half, Stuart. If you come in and bring rent freezes, that value is going to drop to 10 cents on the dollar. And he has been very vocal about his desire to have socialized housing. What is socialized housing? It's government-controlled housing. The government owns the properties and controls the housing stock. That's what he wants. So if you over-regulate and you drive values down to 10 cents on the dollar, the government is prone to swoop in, acquire these properties, and fulfill his dream of socialized housing, which is communism.
Quickly, a new report.
So he wants the landlords and the people who own the billionaires or millionaires who own properties to just say, that's it, I'm done, then the government takes over, and then the properties are not what they once were. And then the government, it turns into government housing, which you have, let's say, an area of the city with, really beautiful apartments, and then suddenly they're no longer the same type of apartments. And so that's what MAMDANI wants for New York City, not necessarily affordable for the working class, just apartments that are not worth what they once were.
It's got from Real Deal. Mm-hmm. It says that 1 in 3 Manhattan condos sold for a loss over the last year.
That's right.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. In New York, the last decade, values have been rather flat. And that's because we had a large boom 10, 15 years ago, and prices have peaked. And also because demand has been rather inconsistent because of all the turmoil that's happened in the city in the last 5-6 years.
But you're not unhappy in the real estate business in Manhattan, are you?
It's picking up. Luckily, even with all these concerns, it is very active. The last 3 months have been the most active I've seen it on the residential side since 2021.
Well,
Let's bring in Committee to Unleash Prosperity co-founder Steve Moore and American Majority CEO Ned Ryan. Gentlemen, great to see you. Steve, is MAMDANI, is he just arrogant enough to think that he can make policies work that Castro and Stalin couldn't? And he's trying to sell them to people he knows to be morons.
Well, Dagan, I come from the city of Chicago, and Chicago has tried this very similar experience over the last few years with a pretty socialist new mayor, and the city has gone to hell. And so every time you try to move a city to the left where you don't fight crime, you raise taxes, you let the schools go to hell, you have homeless people everywhere, people leave. And the real shame here is that
Yeah, but if you are listening to MSNBC, CNN, The Washington Post, The New York Times, Hollywood, Robert De Niro, and you're constantly inundated with Trump bad, Trump authoritarian, then you lose sight. Then suddenly MAMDANI, ain't so bad. Oh, maybe you give him a try. And it's like, there's a reason people keep moving from blue states to red states. Very few people are actually moving from a comfortable life in Florida and Texas and saying, God, I really want to live in New York City, or I really want to go to Seattle.
If he is elected, I estimate that Wall Street will be lost. In other words, the city that has been the financial center of the world for the last 200 years will no longer be housed in New York. And by the way, it's been moving out, but how is this all going to be financed? Oh, we're just going to raise taxes on the top 1%. They're not going to be there anymore. So then where are we going to get the money?
Ned, let me ask you about these grocery stores specifically, because the one in Kansas City, in Missouri rather, failed. And it failed pretty abruptly. They had no visitors there, essentially. And we had a reporter go, there were no groceries on the shelves. There was no choice. People don't realize what they're getting into when they open up this kind of Pandora's box, because this is a really competitive business. It's run on very tight margins. And in the capitalist system, competition is what keeps it alive, and acumen of, smart executives that run these companies. The government cannot get in the grocery business.
You're correct. I mean, I think it's 1%, 2%, 3% maybe profit margins for grocery stores. And you've got to be pretty sophisticated to keep those things going. Obviously, this is not a solution. I think one of the real problems is, you mentioned this in the opening, these millennials that are part of MAMDANI's policy circle. They've come through these indoctrination centers and been told how glorious and how great Marxism and socialism are, and now they're coming into the real world and trying to promote those ideas. I think the only way we're going to successfully solve this is when people get fully exposed to the consequences of their terrible decisions and fully experience it for themselves. Because I think many times in life we do not fully experience the consequences of our decisions. And I think it's probably time that they experience it and learn the hard way. And once you learn the hard way, you usually make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, I'm experiencing the consequences of my decisions out in the Garden State. Which is like a veritable Reagan-era paradise compared to what New York City might become. But Ned, stay on this. What happened?
So if you ask the average Democratic Socialist, how on earth is the city not going to fall into a budget deficit? How on earth are these government-run grocery stores going to make a profit? What would be the profit margin of these government-run grocery stores? What's the profit margin? You can ask any of these simple questions to wonderful, morally superior, highly educated leftists. They either won't know the answer, they don't care about the answer, it's not important, or they'll say, well, you have money for this, why not money for that? And the issue is justice and morality must correlate to actual economic sense, things that make sense economically. You can't be moral and just if people are poor.
Happens here isn't happening in the rest of the country. And there are plenty of options. GE Appliances is planning to spend $3 billion in U.S. investments to help blunt the tariffs. So in essence, you don't want to pay the tariff, you onshore production.
Everybody that was losing their minds back in April that Trump didn't know what he was doing with the tariffs and all the Chicken Little and pearl clutching that took place. Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He wants to onshore more business to not only help more Americans get employed and to help our economy, but to strengthen communities, to strengthen families. I mean, just all the repercussions of what he's doing.
So that helps the working class. General Electric, 1,000 new jobs, $3 billion investment into the United States of America to circumvent the tariffs. So Trump imposes tariffs. And then companies don't want to pay those tariffs, so they build in the United States. They invest in the United States, like General Electric. That's what helps the working class. See, if you're a Democratic Socialist, and I understand being on the left, I was on the left my entire life. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. Okay, I get it. I didn't understand, nor did I care about the repercussions of banning fracking. I thought it was moral and just, and that's it. Okay, that was a foolish mentality. I had a foolish mentality. Then I realized, hey, wait a second. Trump is actually doing a very good job. The real issue is that I want a president who is against never-ending military conflict and counterinsurgency wars. I am against those things. I oppose those things. I think that's the worst. Endless wars will actually end the planet because there's nuclear armament involved, in this day and age for the past 50, 60 years. Okay, or 80 years. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, you have a mentality on the left is moral, just, morally superior, be good, poor people must be helped. Then why make them poorer? Socialist policies increase poverty. This is a fact. There's zero rebuttal to that. You can ask a Cuban American who saved this country. The Cuban Americans in Miami and Florida saved this country, okay, helping turn Florida red. They don't want the policies of Castro and communist policies, okay? Why don't people who lived in the Soviet Union or Cuba want communist policies? Because they lead to poverty. That's why.
In building out our communities and our economy, it's glorious to watch. But it took someone with Trump's courage to withstand that storm and doubt, to be able to pull this off. And I think we're going to continue seeing real positive benefits from those decisions he made in April.
And Steve, I just want to highlight some of the states that they're expanding in: Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina. This is how you bring manufacturing home. President Biden said he was going to give us manufacturing jobs. He never did. This is one strategy. I mean, the tariffs, listen, we can either collect them as revenue, or you can get companies to onshore the manufacturing here, bring those jobs home, and strengthen that sector. This is really important to the American people.
So it's amazing, that list of states that you just mentioned, and I can't really tick them all off. But the point is, I think every one of those states that you just mentioned, Jackie, is in the South. And so what's happened over the course of the last 30 or 40 years is America has not lost manufacturing jobs. The Northeast and the Midwest have, because of policies like forced unionization policies. Where are all these new investments going? They're going to states that have right to work laws, where every worker has the right to decide whether they want to be in a union or not. They are also states, by the way, Jackie, what else they have in common? They have very low taxes. In fact, some of those states have no income tax at all. What's really tragic about what's going on in New York, in just the last 10 years, New York has lost a net 2 million people to other states. That's going to turn into a stampede of people out of that city and state if these continued socialistic policies are implemented. I mean, look, I pray it doesn't happen. Yes, Ned is right that sometimes they have to learn the lesson. But boy, is this going to learn the lesson the hard way. It's going to do the entire nation great damage if our empire city crumbles because of crazy left-wing ideas.
Before we go, Steve Moore, our national debt has hit $37 trillion and climbing. Yeah. Interest on the debt last month was $92 billion. It's running at $101 billion. So the end of debt held by the public.
The rebuttal from socialists or Democrats, well, you have money for war. Yeah, you voted on them. Clinton, Kerry, Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Biden, they voted for these wars. Trump stopped them, or President Obama continued. But Trump is not going to get us into endless military interventions. Okay? That's the moral imperative in voting for Trump. But I mean, why doesn't MAMDANI or other socialists just say, let's just print more money? Let's give let's have a minimum wage of $500 an hour. What's the problem? There's not really a rebuttal to that from the socialist perspective. But anyway, let's continue.
Public as a share.
That's per month, right? That 100 billion is per
101
month.
billion is the monthly average. Yes. So
monthly.
We're north of
amazing.
$1 trillion so far this fiscal year. Take a look at this chart. This is federal debt held by the public, which Larry Kudlow was talking about earlier today, as a percentage of GDP. Can we put this chart up? Take a look at that. We ain't growing our way out of that, buddy. We're not growing our way out of it. We also have to cut. Steve Moore, yes. How do you see it?
Well, the only way out of this is to grow our way out of it. We have to grow. We have to get to 3 to 4% growth. And by the way, Trump has put us on that path. If you do that, you start bending the curve downward. But of course, on top of that, you have to start making substantial changes to our budget. We have $500 billion a year the government's own auditors say have gone to just fraudulent payments. How hard is it just make sure that only people who are eligible for the programs get it? Oh, yeah, the Democrats were against that. They wanted Medicaid to go to people who aren't even eligible for it.
The abolition of private property? Who says that? Who's seeking, a job that voters put him into? Sorry, this sets me on fire.
Karl Marx.
Lydia, go.
Yeah, Karl Marx. I'm so glad you say that, Gary, because when I hear MAMDANI speak, I ask myself, are we not students of history? Are we not looking to patterns that have unfolded in the past? I want to know what.
Wonderful, morally superior Democrats are not students of history. They think that socialism and communism can definitely work if it's done right. That's the rebuttal. Every attempt at communism or socialism has never worked. And pointing out a capitalist country and then a socialist policy, or government-run policy, is not socialism. Okay. Simply saying, "Oh, well, it's a subsidy. That's socialism." No, that's just maybe government subsidy or government policy within a capitalist society. But anyway, let's continue.
Test case he's looking at that says that's the path forward. Because when I start hearing him talk about, state housing, it makes me think of a scenario that my dad had to flee from when he was a kid. China, that's not much different than what the Communist Party did when they consolidated power in the 1940s. One of the first things they did was they gathered up all the property, redistributed it because they wanted to redistribute wealth. It doesn't work. Look what it's gotten them today, a population that depends far too much on their own government, a population that's aging, that doesn't have employment opportunities, that can't buy the real estate that's even available to them. They're in a lot of trouble. I will say that I think MAMDANI is doing something right here, is that he is speaking to a real estate crisis in this country that I think, frankly, neither side is really speaking to right now, particularly for folks that are in my generation. People in their 30s or early 40s that are hoping to buy their first home. It's really tough going right now with interest rates where they are, which gets back to the idea of President Trump.
Interest rates were exponentially increased during Biden's administration because inflation was out of control. So the 30 and 40-year-olds, or the late 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who voted for Biden didn't do themselves any favors. Before, Democrats shut down their economies, their state economies, and pushed for the entire country to be shut down forever. And that's not hyperbole. They wanted to shut down 5 years ago for as long as the experts told them. And Trump's like, "Hey, let's open up. Oh, defying experts." Every Washington Post and New York Times article, defying experts. I mean, their propaganda is so easy to decipher, to see through. But once Biden took over, inflation went through the roof. And the only way to curb inflation was to raise interest rates. That's why it's so difficult to buy a home, because interest rates went up exponentially during Biden's administration.
Trump and his call for a cut on interest rates, but not to conflate ideas. MAMDANI, he's got the right problem identified, but the wrong solution for a number of reasons. That's just one of them. The quality of public housing here in the city should also scare anybody who's walked into them.
He said unhoused, though.
Yeah.
I would guess he's talking about the homeless problem, when he says unhoused, because that's how they refer to people who are homeless in liberal circles. And the homeless problem, the liberals always want to act like it is a real estate issue. It is a affordability crisis, and it's not. The large percentage of homeless people are severely mentally ill and drug or alcohol addicted. They are dual diagnosis. So that, again, he's burying what is the real, they always do that. They bury what is the real problem and the real source of homelessness. So when he says unhoused, I suspect that's what he's talking about. But you ask the question of how can someone look at history and see the results of these ideas, seizing the means of production, no private property, government-run food supply, taking control of the food supply, which is government-run grocery stores. How can they not know the results and how that worked out? Because every politician is ultimately consumed with their own arrogance and their own sense of genius. He can't smell his own stink. And so he thinks that he can execute on these ideas in a way that, Mao couldn't. Or
I can be successful at this.
Right. Fidel couldn't. That I will make this work when these titans of disaster and terror could not.
Do you really think he understands what he's calling for? I mean, do you think he really gets the complete transformation of American society he's calling for?
I do think the conceit of the...
Paul Bartlett, thank you so very much. In Australia, thank you, Paul, for the super chat. Thank you so much. To my super chat, thank you. The grocery stores are not going to work. They were tried in the Soviet Union. It didn't work. There's going to be the city-run or state-run or government-run grocery stores don't work.
New York City Democrat mayor candidate Zoran Mamdani trying to woo New York City business leaders this week, but his socialist agenda is scaring many of them off, especially for grocery store owners.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm ZORAN MAMDANI, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores.
So he pulled in
I will create a profitable network of city-owned grocery stores, because we know that everything from, the DMV, I mean, there's good people at the DMV, but where's the profit motive? Where is the precedent, or where is the history of city departments being profitable, making a profit? The state of New York is in a $30+ billion budget deficit. The New York City is close to being in a budget deficit. So how are these city officials so good at turning a profit on things? Why didn't they already have city-run grocery stores? And didn't grocery stores run by the state in the Soviet Union collapse? There were lines and long lines for mayonnaise, and only one type of mayonnaise.
Grocery store owner John Katzimatidis is here. He's the chairman and CEO of the Red Apple Group, which owns and operates supermarkets across the city. Anybody who's ever lived in New York knows the Gristedes chain. Welcome to you. Good to have you here, John.
Thank you for having me here. Zoran, he's a nice guy. He has a great smile, but he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. He's a 33-year-old kid that knows nothing about business. He is a created character. And we have the highest cost in the country, highest energy cost, highest transportation cost. We even have congestion pricing, and in union costs. So of course,
what's your prediction if the government owns and operates grocery stores?
They're going to go broke.
Who's going to go broke?
The government will end up going broke. You're going to end up like Havana. I mean, I was there in Havana with Fidel Castro. The shelves were empty. He promised the world to the people. He says, get rid of Batista and things will be great. Well, it was all one big lie. And what I'm worried about the Democratic Party, they allowed the socialists, the common sense Democrats, allowed the socialists to take over. I mean, what is going on here? And the money is coming in from, I guess, Soros has been reported, and that family in Singapore, the Shinhan family, which rumors are that also Chinese money is going into that and going to that C4 company. So I've told members of Congress, investigate. You can't, they have 50
And Zoran indictment possibly incoming. The thing is, if Mamdani, AOC, I believe, gets most of her campaign donations outside of New York, you have to ask yourself, why do Democrats oftentimes get campaign money, either half or approaching half or more than half of their campaign donations outside of their state? What does that tell you? And then they go after Trump for being an operative of another country.
$1 million in that company.
Yeah. I know that's a big concern of yours.
Now, we bought Manhattan from the Indians for $24. They're going to buy Manhattan back for $50 million that they put into that working family's account.
I want to get more of your reaction to Mamdani in his own words, John. And this is him taking to TikTok, as he often does, and he's spreading his message there widely, explaining how these city-owned grocery stores would work. Listen.
We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
Sounds to me like he just accused you of price gouging.
Price gouging? We're paying the highest taxes in the world. You give us the incentives and we'll lower the prices. You get rid of the real estate taxes. We'll lower the prices. I mean, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He is promising the people the world.
Yeah.
And it's all about...
Well, my iPhone is expensive. And, you know, clothing is expensive, too. Why doesn't MAMDANI start his own New York City-run tech companies that can build iPhones or whatever, build cell phones? Why doesn't he start businesses within New York City run by New York City officials and departments within the city and the state? Why not go from, if grocery stores will work, why can't he expand that to other industries as well? What about New York City jeans? Clothing sold by the city. I mean, you could, why not expand? Make it economies of scale from funded by tax dollars, and that'll make the city wealthy, right? Why not? What's the rebuttal to that? Aside from scoffing and snarky and...
bunch of, how does Trump say it? A bunch of crap.
Okay.
And look, we run a great operation for 50 years in the supermarket business, and but you can't fight City Hall.
So the three people on screen, the gentleman to the left of Bernie Sanders and MAMDANI is a very, very successful supermarket owner. Okay. Bernie and MAMDANI have never owned a business in their life, yet they're so good at helping the working class. But they've never employed anybody. Trump has, the gentleman to the left has, but why hasn't Bernie or MAMDANI employed anyone or started a business if they're so good at lowering costs and helping the working class?
Forbid this guy wins.
Yeah, and by the way, you spread a lot of your wealth charitably. I've been to these events, police events and beyond, where you are trying to help the inner city kids and develop them however best you can. You're very generous. Rick Scott was on your WABC radio show on Sunday talking about these Dem policies and what they would do to people like you who spend a lot of money in this city and are very charitable, what you might do and where you might go. Listen.
Every elected official in New York on the Democrat side seems like they were just recruiting people to move to Florida because it's just insanity.
I mean, does this mean if he becomes mayor, would you still live in New York?
You know, you never know. Maybe I'll live in New York for less than 185 days a year. But the people in Florida, they're saying, come on down. Texas, they're saying, come on down. The blue states have to realize that they have to compete with the rest of the country. And they're not understanding that. I'm waiting to see what the Democratic leadership, Senator Schumer, Governor Hochul, Hakeem Jeffries, what are they going to do with the socialists? Are they going to endorse them or not endorse them? I think that's the next challenge, to see what the heck is going to go on.
But you're an optimistic New Yorker.
I love New York, and we're gonna win New York back.
All right, John, it was good to have you on America Reports. Come back soon.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you here. All right, John.
I'm Steve Ducey.
On set, Charlie Hurt, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business senior correspondent, and Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief of National Review. I begin with you, Charlie Hurt, because you're not from New York.
There we go.
Although you're here every weekend, that's
right.
enough now.
That's right. I feel like an honorary New Yorker.
Yes.
No, it'll be interesting to see whether or not, I agree with you about Curtis Sliwa. It'll be interesting to see whether or not voters, polls show that, that in fact, this helped him. But it was extraordinary as an outsider to watch MAMDANI, who is obviously standing next to Andrew Cuomo, looks like a really dynamic guy. It's kind of helps him a little bit. But he could not give any answer whatsoever about how he was going to pay for any of this fantasy that Slee was pointing out. And he looked ridiculous. He sounded ridiculous. But he does it with that goofy, smug smile that I'm afraid might appeal to 50% plus one.
New York, doesn't even need 50 point. Yeah. Doesn't even need 50 plus one. In this race.
It only needs about 30 and change. But New Yorkers will see right through that.
No,
they'll see right through the smugness. They hate. No, New Yorker, Charlie, come on. New Yorkers hate smug. You can say a lot of things. Larry, New Yorkers hate smugness.
TKO MAMDANI. Sorry for my voice.
Oh no,
he won this debate easy, and I'll tell you why he won. Because when it came down to it, I mean, Curtis did okay. Made some great points on free market, what is needed for this, for the city to get it back on track, which, by the way, it's been off track since Bloomberg left, let's face it. We've had a commie in Bill de Blasio. We've had
semi-commie.
Yeah, he's pretty commie.
Full commie coming.
Yeah, full commie is coming. We had something bizarre in Eric Adams who didn't really change the sort of direction, the socialist direction of the city. And now we have probably a real commie coming. Neither Curtis, in my view, or Cuomo landed, definitely not Cuomo, the knockout punch that was needed. They did not expose him to be a commie. Curtis should have stood up and said, listen, with all due respect, you're a Maoist, you hate Israel, here's what you said, here's what you want to do. He didn't say that, he kind of talked around it. Cuomo, on the other hand, I mean, where was his old man? I knew Mario Cuomo.
Me too.
That dude would have taken MAMDANI's head off.
Cuomo was low energy Jeb.
You can be
energy.
But Andrew Cuomo was one of the worst governors ever. So he couldn't, I mean, there was a nursing home scandal 5 years ago. He was called America's mayor, governor. Remember that? He won, I think, some kind of hilarious Hollywood, he won an Emmy. They gave him an Emmy, I think, for his midday reports on the C word. And then they took the Emmy back. They took the Emmy back.
Jeb?
You can be gruff and sort of impressively no nonsense and strong, or you can be gruff and just unlikable and tired. And that's what you get from Cuomo. And that's why I agree with Charlie. Look, Curtis is very sincere. He knows the city, has great ideas, but the band there is like 10 to 18% of the vote, right? He's not going to win this race. He's a Republican in New York City. He's not winning this race. So MAMDANI, as John Podhoretz put in the New York Post, seemed like a petulant graduate student. But I think of those, he just needs to hold serve.
John Podhoretz's best column in 10 years.
It's very good.
He stopped bashing Trump just for a moment in order to come in. Well, I love John Podhoretz.
Someone easier to bash here, right?
And I adored his father.
But Larry, when you are faced with what both Cuomo and Sleewood faces, a guy clearly in the lead, you literally have to throw some haymakers.
Right.
You need a Ronald Reagan moment. You need something. Remember Reagan with Carter? Well, there he goes again. You need something like that.
Or just shatter the rules and go after him.
But I won't. Yeah, but he was hammering away. He was body.
No,
look, I refuse. He was light. I'm not saying. By the way, my position in the riff was not that Curtis is going to win. My position in the riff was that Curtis won the night.
He was the best.
Well, he won the night
because
he appealed to us.
And I'm not going to be. No, well, I don't know about that. I think common sense New Yorkers know if you have one of these domestic violence calls, you're not sending the social worker in first. I'm sorry. And common sense New Yorkers want more cops on the streets and in the subways. But how much? And common sense New Yorkers know the difference between 14.8% and zero.
But Larry,
this is a city. This is a business. Used to be a business city.
You brought that up.
Yes.
They let it go.
Right.
That was literally.
But he got it in.
Seconds.
Sort of.
He should have. That's the problem.
We should have called him Fidel. I wanted him to call him Fidel.
And by the way, every fight
would have been good.
I wanted him to.
Obviously, the BS is just dripping off of MAMDANI.
All right, let's get some more quotes. Let's give me a quote. I don't care. This is a crime in New York. Do we have a quote on crime in New York?
Cuomo, Mamdani not denouncing Hamas, that's good too. It's Cuomo's best thing. Guys, let's hear some sound, have some fun. Equal time, go. Roll tape.
We have the architect and we have the apprentice of no cash bail, which has been a disaster. We have the architect and the apprentice here of raise the age. Now, let me get this straight. A police officer is there first. He has to wait for the arrival of a mental health care worker. You're dealing with fantasy also.
All right.
The police officers are going to be the first one on the scene, and they're always going to have to deal with it first and foremost.
These are great lines. These are great lines. The architect and the apprentice. Come on, these are great lines.
This is why it was suicide to gather behind Cuomo. Cuomo lost fair and square the Democrat primary, and he's not the best person to get behind.
The only way Cuomo can win, I believe this, the entire Democratic Party who walked away from him has to come back. And I don't think they will.
He's not going to win.
Will they vote for Curtis Sliwa? I don't know that. All I'm saying is I just hate at this point. You got 2.5 weeks to go. I believe there's another debate, if I'm not mistaken. There's one more debate.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be back in a couple of hours. Hit subscribe. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. We'll have a lot more. We'll try to do one. We'll do 2 live